Thank you so much for having me. I will acknowledge this is a little jarring, to be asked to speak about equity already in 20 minutes, but with 3 minutes before you're supposed to leave. And so I think the expectation and the bar was set really high, but the circumstances are not good. And unfortunately, that's what happens with equity a lot, right? I remember being a kid and getting allowance from my mom and telling her all the things I needed. And she said, I don't care what you think you need, this is how much money you got, so you better create a budget, and you better decide what you're gonna spend it on and how you're gonna prioritize your money. And I've carried that with me to being an adult, realizing how we budget our money, how we budget our time is really a reflection of who we are and what we value. And so I'm gonna try to breeze through this and get through a lot of slides, and I know many of you will have to leave, but I just wanna thank the Downtown Denver Partnership for bringing me here. I wanna thank all the staff at the hotel who gave us a great lunch, the walk-up music, and it's really good to be in Denver. As someone who's from Omaha, this place reminds me of home. Big Daddy's Pizza, thunderstorms, one of my residents when I was an RA at Creighton is here, and a lot of white people. Like it's really just like Omaha. So I couldn't be happier to be here. So a lot of folks probably have no idea who I am. And before I talk about who I am, I like to talk about why I even do equity work. And this is my wife and my son, Atay. And I do equity work because of them. My wife is Canadian, and so I always say, she's super white. But whenever we talk about equity work, there's this belief that it is the job of folks of color to do that work. And not only are we supposed to do that work, but again, we're given unreasonable circumstances where we have to do that work, where we have to help teach everybody and help everyone learn without the tools or the support to really succeed. And people are just like, well, we hired that person. Why aren't they doing it? And why do they keep leaving? And they just expect it to happen. And I share this picture of my wife and son because we're good, progressive, gay people. And we were like, maybe we should be those parents who raise our kid without gender. Like, just buy him a bunch of pink shit and don't let him play with trucks. Like, just make him a human. And then we had a serious conversation and we said, look, he's a black man. And the world's gonna see him as a black man. And as somebody who dresses like this and has my hair cut like this, I have been in many situations with my white wife where people think I am a black man and pull her aside, pull us over, ask if she's okay, if she chose to be in the car with me. And so we know what it is to walk the world in that way. And we wouldn't be doing our son any favors if we didn't raise him to know that he can be anything he wants to be, but the world is still gonna see him as a black man. And in doing that work, my wife had to up her game, right? As parents, all of us who have kids, we know that we really prefer help. And maybe it's not from another parent, maybe it's from our community, but that shit is hard. So we need other people. And no one would expect me to just have my white wife say, well, you're black, so you gotta do all the black things. It's not just my job, it's both of our jobs. We're raising him together. So that means she has to read some stuff. That means sometimes she says really crazy stuff and I'm like, talk to a white friend, I don't have time for it. I need you to Google how to be better. And sometimes we have to realize that we all have a part to play in this work. And this is something that one of our employees said at Tool Design, and I think this statement is so important because it is integrating equity and inclusion into all that we do is fundamental in how we're gonna change our company, how we're gonna change our field, how we're gonna change our cities. And so we have to do it. And one of the ways you have to do it is you have to articulate that desire. You have to articulate what it is you're going to do. You have to put it in writing. You have to make sure that people can hold you accountable. You can't just talk about it and say all the buzzwords, but then when people are like, wait, what are we measuring against? There's no way to do it. And we have that issue at our company. We have 18 offices. These are just some of the cities where we have offices. And we have a ton of white people. Our website is beautiful. I really encourage you to go to the Tool Design website. But as you scroll through the staff pictures, I look like a chocolate chip in the middle of a sugar cookie. Like, there's a lot of white folks. And what I love about our company is instead of saying, like, we just don't know what to do, we said we need to figure it out. And so for the past year, we've been working internally, not just to change the way we interact with our clients and with the cities and the folks we serve, but how can we as a company talk differently about this? And how can we all do the work? And when I think of Denver, and I say I'm from LA, this is what a lot of people say to me. And I also think of all the stereotypes those of us not from Denver have about Denver. But I actually have quite a bit of family in Denver. I know I said I'm from Omaha, and that surprised a ton of people because yes, there are black people there. But I also have family in Denver. One of my dad's 14 brothers and sisters moved to Denver. His first wife was black, and he has 2 black children. His second wife was white, and he has 1 white child. And the experience of my white cousin living in the city is so different than the experience of my black cousin living in the city. And so when I think of Denver, I think of how different it would be to live here with the same last name and the same parents if I just looked different. And the reality is, this is a slide that I can show in so many cities just like Denver. Because when we say we're gonna improve, or we're gonna make something better, or we're gonna revitalize, this is what people think. That we're coming in with our Urban Outfitter record player and like super expensive coffee, and we're forgetting about the people who are already there, the problems that already existed. And we're just thinking of them as problems. And this always happens in communities of color. I was sharing with some folks earlier that when I started at the Bike Coalition, I had just left being a civil rights lawyer. I used to work at Blackwell when I was in Omaha as an intern. Like, I was a lawyer who fought for civil rights, and all my friends were like, yo, bike lanes are the first sign of gentrification. What are you doing? Like, this is totally gonna ruin your street cred. And I would always say, folks of color have been riding bikes forever. Folks of color, I always tell the joke, folks of color invented bike share. Hey, yo, homie, let me hold your bike for a minute. I'll bring it right back. We've been doing this. We've been in the game. And so it's not this issue that we don't want to see our communities change, but the changes are happening to us, not with us. There are still models of let's go into the community and empower people, but empowerment is still a model built on colonialism and white supremacy. It's still saying we have the power, let's bestow it on them. We should be co-powering with these communities. We should be realizing that the folks in the community know more than we do. In LA, we changed an intersection where people kept dying, invested a lot of money, and then people kept dying. And then we reached out to the brown folks in the community finally and said, why are people still dying? And they said, because the bus stop is in the middle of the block. And there's only 1 tree on this block, in the middle of the block on the other side of the street. So you can put in your fancy sidewalks, you can put in your fancy crosswalks, but when the bus comes, people are still running in the middle of the street because it's hot. And if we don't talk to people, if we don't trust that they know some of the solutions, then again, it doesn't feel like things are being built for them. It feels like it's being built to push them out and to bring other people in. Because again, we've been riding bikes. Why didn't no one care about a bike lane before? We've wanted fresh food. Why didn't no one care about the grocery store before? And when I was going through the Downtown Denver report and looking at all of the things that you all ranked highly in, sorry, Rachel, I was at the airport last night, and I don't know, it was rough. Almost didn't get here. But you guys seem to be doing well. And then I look at the demographics, and I look at who's here. And when I look around this room, when I think about the people who got to speak on this stage, it reflects these demographics. And so how do you include people who, feel like they're not even at the table, they're just on the menu? How do you realize that the table is your setting, where you keep saying we can't get people here? It's because they have their own tables and you're not going to them. And I also found these tech stats super interesting. Someone who used to live in the Bay Area and saw what tech did to our region, many good ways, some not so great, but a lot of my friends work in tech. They have the best parties because they have the most money. And when I think about tech, I think about the CEO of Microsoft, who said that to survive in that industry, only innovation is respected. And he also has all these quotes about like how you have to be able to fail, and only through your failures do you have success. But the reality is, everybody's not allowed to fail. As a queer Black woman, when I speak, people think I'm speaking for everybody. If I could just like live in my parents' house and only focus on one thing ever and not have the pressure of what people expect me to be and not be on me at all times, I could invent some shit too, but I'm busy. And this idea that innovation is what's gonna take us, I don't understand how in so many of these fields that require creativity, whether or not you're talking about tech or transportation, they're so white. When you look at the business world, where you have to be innovative and beat competitors, they're so white. And I don't get it because people of color are the most innovative people we got. People of color have constantly been told, you won't make it. People of color have constantly been told, you have one purpose, to serve us. People of color have constantly been held back, been separated, been oppressed, been enslaved, been killed. And yet we continue to find joy. We continue to succeed. We continue to be state representatives and mayors. We have the most creativity because we keep doing shit people tell us we can't do. And so when I look around at businesses, I wonder, why do you keep telling me it's so hard to get people of color when we're so creative? We're so innovative. And what are we so scared of? Why aren't we doing the work? And maybe you're saying, well, so what? What is that work? First, it's recognizing our own fragility. And it is no mistake that this is a picture of a white woman, because white women can be super fragile. I know, I'm married to one, I love her. She's fragile, right? The Saturday Night Live skit with Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock after the election, where all the white people were crying and they were like, oh, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to America. And Chris Rock looks at Dave Chappelle and they laugh and they're like, the worst thing in America? Right? Like, I feel like sometimes we center our own pain, and when we center our own pain, which, self-care is important, we forget the other folks who have been suffering for so long. And it's just not white people who are fragile. Anybody can be fragile. And it's especially hard for people who have been oppressed in some other way. When I came out to my mom, she didn't speak to me for a year. She was horrible. She wouldn't give me lunch money. She wouldn't talk to me. And when we finally reconciled, after she went to a meeting, when she was getting her counseling degree, and she heard from parents of kids who had committed suicide because being gay in Omaha, Nebraska is really hard, and she cried and she apologized. She said, I was just so worried about what people were going to think of me as a parent. And we've all had those moments, right? Where like someone's trying to tell us something, and all we can think about is how it's going to impact us. And that fragility really gets in our way. And then we start thinking, well, it's not me, it's the institutions, it's the systems, and we like to blame those things. But at some point as people, we have to realize that we make up those institutions, we make up those companies, we make up those systems, and we can prioritize. We can figure out our budget. We can figure out how to care about other people. And then we can start to ask the hard questions. Because as a black person who walked in this room, I can guarantee, like the other black people, we were like, 1, 2, hey, what's up? And if you didn't say hi back, we're like, all right, you can't come to the barbecue, something's wrong with you. Like, you've been around these folks too long. And the question is, if there aren't black people, who's asking that question? Who's asking how the folks with disability got into the room? Who's asking all of those questions, and who are we not just relying on? And who's asking, do they have the support they need? Do they have the time they need? Do they have the resources they need to survive? And if you never have to think about this stuff, if you just get to go to work every day and focus on work, and you're gonna say, well, yeah, I think about my family too, and I have stress too. But if you don't understand that I said, do they have the tools they need to survive? If you don't understand that for us, it's about survival. Because every day when we walk into these spaces and we look at these ballrooms and we see all these white faces and we are being told to like say the things that are gonna get people thinking, that's at great personal expense. That takes a lot out of me. And in helping the folks we help, we do it because we care. We care about our cities, we care about our companies, we care about our friends. We want them to be better. But while we're out there caring for everybody else, who's caring for us? And this is particularly true for women of color. Anybody who's seen me speak before knows I say if there's a natural disaster, find a woman of color and follow her because we will be okay. We are always okay. But people start relying on us to always be okay, and they don't ensure that we're okay. And when you think, how can I do this? There are stages, right? Everyone says when you give good speeches, do things of three. So I'll give you three things and then I'll end. When you're trying to do this equity work, sometimes you start off as just an actor. Mel Gibson is a great example. Great actor. Look at those awards. Despicable human being. Just horrible. People forget he's horrible, but he's horrible. Just Google Mel Gibson, racist, anti-Jew, like horrible. But he keeps showing up at these award ceremonies and winning because he knows how to play the part. And so sometimes when we're doing this equity work, you have to just play the part. You don't know why you're doing it, but you know it's the right thing to do, and so you do it. I don't get this whole pronoun thing, but they say they like to go by they, so I'm gonna use they. You just act the part. Now, the trouble with being an actor is if you stay in that place, if you just keep faking it until you make it, at some point it will be revealed that you are a racist and a horrible human being. Mel Gibson, not you. You're not a racist. And it'll come out. And that's why you have to say, like, sometimes I'm just gonna fake it until I make it, but at some point, I wanna become an ally. At some point, I wanna be the person who doesn't just post on Facebook every time there's another themed month. I actually want action. So when the woman in the meeting says something and no one says anything, and then I'm just like, what happened? I'm gonna go up to her after the meeting and be like, hey, I really appreciate that you said that. I don't know why anybody, like no one else said anything, but that was really great, and I'm so happy you're here, and I'm so happy your perspective is here. What are the actual actions you're taking to be an ally? And at some point, you have to realize that we are in a place in our history where there is urgency, and there is division, and we should really be building things together. And so being an ally simply isn't enough. We need accomplices. And the difference between being an ally and an accomplice is that as accomplice, you're willing to risk something. So you ask yourself, why did I go up to Sue after the meeting when no one else was around, when no one else could hear me and tell her I supported her? Why in the meeting did I not speak up in front of everybody and say, I really appreciate what you said? And it's probably because, people are kind of annoyed with Sue. You don't want to be grouped in, or you don't know if it's going to ruffle feathers. So the things we're expecting those folks who are often the other, the only one, the things we expect them to bravely do, we may support them by shooting off an email afterwards or telling them one-on-one over drinks. But what are we actually doing where the folks like me who are willing to risk jobs, risk friends, risk influence, what are you doing to support them when they take that risk? What are you doing to be brave? We live in this world where everybody's like, I want to create a safe space. I don't know what a safe space is. Every time I leave my house and I don't tell my mother, she's terrified because she knows that being in my mid-30s, I've already lived longer than I was supposed to. Every time I tell her about another incident or something that happens, she worries. And she knows that there's no such thing as a safe space if I am authentically who I am. So all I can do every day is be brave. If someone is undocumented and they need to go to the doctor, but they know there's sweeps there and they go because their kid's sick, that takes bravery. If someone is trans and they use the bathroom they identify with, and people push them out or yell at them or say things, that takes bravery. So when you're being an accomplice, you're willing to be brave and risk something. And something that we should all do is start asking ourselves these 3 questions. Think out 6 months, think out a year. What do I want to start? What do I want to stop? What do I want to do more of? Put reminders on your calendar. Check in with yourself. Did you actually do those things? Or are you just depending on people like me to do them in 15 minutes or less? And remember that all of us are passionate about something. And sometimes we're lucky enough that that's the work we're doing. And we get so focused in on doing that work. We get so focused in on this is my issue and this is the thing that's important. But the reality is, for many of us who live at intersections, who are constantly thinking about the many ways the world sees us and the many things we have to be passionate about to try to get free and make our cities and our communities better, we don't get to focus on a single issue. So how can we start all doing our work to realize that there's no such thing as a single issue struggle, because none of us live single issue lives? Thank you.